Right, I'm Dan Crane, Development Management Team Leader at Active Travel England. We're a massive team of 9 development management caseload people. There's a head of DM, there's myself and my colleague Lawrence, who's the other DM team leader, and a bunch of lovely senior planning managers. And we're responsible for kind of the mechanism of assessing large-scale cases in the development management space as a statutory consultee. First of all, transport and urban design. I always start with the personal, because transport is a personal choice. It starts with individual choice, and place is very much in the same scope. And I've got a picture of my running shoes, not my latest ones, but probably my favourite ones. And I noticed recently in Urban Nous there was a lovely little article about some type of policy guidance for runners. And as somebody who likes to trundle along the place and often has to dodge dogs and leads and those types of things, I'm calling for that. I should have put that in the brainstorm earlier. A generation ago, it would be remiss of me not to reference something from the generation ago. Apart from the fact in 1999 I actually visited Plymouth and sold cans of beer on the Plymouth Hoe. It's very, very apt, because the money I made from that, and I was working as a supply teacher in London at the time, very, very different set of circumstances, needed extra money. But with the extra money, I bought myself a mini disc player, and I thought it was the absolute best thing ever. I'm not sure where it is. I think it's up in my attic somewhere. And I thought it was terrific. And it shows how things kind of change. But then some things don't change. And I've got the objectives of urban design from By Design here, which came out in the year 2000. And every single one of those objectives relates either directly in the green or indirectly in the purple to transport and movement. Normality. We know what normality is. This is the picture that we see across our country and across an increasingly urbanised world. And probably the one which gets to me the most and continues to get to me the most is the one on the bottom left, with the pavement parking epidemic that is spreading across the land. The future normality is very much a different thing. For about 4 years of my life, I lived in North London in Finchley, and the North Circular is still a big, loud, noisy road, but in recent years it's been enhanced magnificently by that lovely Peter Barber piece. I'm absolutely inspired by that. If you'd have told me 20 years ago when I was living there that there'd be something like that on the North Circ, I wouldn't believe you. So normality can be very much different. I've also set myself a little bit of a challenge here. That's an excerpt. Everyone knows that's from the publication that's from. Anyone want to hazard a guess? 1964. Traffic in Towns, the Colin Buchanan report. I used it in last year's presentation and spoke about it more. I want to keep talking about that. It's a fantastic piece of a publication. So popular for a government publication that actually a condensed version was made, published by Penguin and distributed. So get yourself around it. You can still pick up a copy on eBay, I believe. So Active Travel England, what do I do in my job? We've been a statutory consultee for 16 months. We have a small DM team. We also have a policy and strategy team. And I say this as the team are actually convening today up in York, and we work very closely together, which for someone who's worked in local authorities and planning local authorities, that's a really special place to be, that we collaborate quite closely from that policy and DM or development control branch, where maybe previous authorities it was a little bit more disjointed. We've assessed over 2,000 applications that have exceeded the thresholds. And we use an assessment toolkit for that, of which we have a second version I'll get onto very, very shortly. And there's a wide range of policy guidance when it comes to giving our responses to large-scale residential, commercial, and roads and school applications. And that is that we don't just follow. Sometimes someone said to me once, you just refer to LTM 120 for cycle guidance and inclusive mobility. Yes, we do. We refer to that, of course, the MPPF, but we're also influenced strongly by design. And it's kind of like, I'm probably the loudest champion, which is why I'm here, for urban design in the assessment of applications, but it's something that's really, really important, that quality, the so-called art of town planning. And we often talk about the art and science of things, and it's very much the art side of things that I'm interested in. So the assessment toolkit itself, I won't read out the 10 criteria. I'm sure these slides will be made accessible by Robert thereafter. But site permeability and particularly placemaking are two of the criteria which are directly related to what we want to see in the outcome of development. In many applications at an outline stage, they have wonderful design and access statements, which are very idealistic. They often follow things like a design code, if there's a really good design code, but then the intentions dilute further along the planning process. And but even in a reserved masses application, we're often looking at things such as appearance, and so therefore we can at least have a say at that stage. We are very much aware though of our role moving forward of being much earlier in that process. I'm sure I will get some questions about that. There is a web version very soon. I was told by comms not to spruik the website. They're going to do a social media release. Please stay tuned for that. And the web version is very much a very highly accessible document. The original criteria had 33, which was quite convoluted. Impacts of ATE's involvement. I used a couple of examples on a UDL session a couple of months ago in July. But I'll just use this one here. This is a real life case, okay? And this is where kind of like our impact is felt. So on the left hand side we have a scheme. It's got some benefits. It's got a shared use path. It's got some nice things about it. But its permeability and its functionality in following the natural desire lines from east to west, north to south, it's kind of missed as a missed opportunity. So through consultation, okay, we were able to open that up, okay, and incorporate a modal filter. We didn't have to mention things like LTNs, we didn't have to mention 15-minute cities or any of those things. It was just about a practical approach to redesign. I'll probably reiterate that fact. We don't really talk about labels and badges so much. We just talk about common sense and giving people choice. Some observations since June 2023. These are mine, a little bit of input from the team, but mostly mine. So I've spoke about the DAS are often fantastic, and there's probably many of you here, I might have even come across your DAS and go, oh, this is great, this is fantastic, this is really good. And then we get to the travel plans and the transport assessments, and I think Katja talked about long-winded documents, and they're hundreds and hundreds of pages long, and you have to waft through transport modelling, all this stuff, and it's like, Control F gets very worn out on my keyboard, so I'm trying to find things. We're kind of town planners, we're investigators, aren't we? And often they're incongruent, to use a nice planning word, with the ambitions of the design and access statement or what's in the design code. Best practice, what we like to see, and that was very much best practice. Lovely street hierarchy, excellent permeability, a nice clear cross-section, and then that last point is the most pivotal. Technical drawings that support these aspirations. Okay, it's great to have the conceptual side of things, but we want to see that reflected in the CAD drawings, and this is also where it comes unstuck a little bit. When transport assessments, I'm going very quickly here, I'm mindful of the content that I've got. When transport assessments and TPs don't realise or benefit from design ambitions, travel plans, often there's very unambitious targets. These are things that we report back on to applicants, that the targets are incredibly unambitious. Okay, we're talking about reduced single car occupancy of 2% over 5 years. That's not what we want to see. It's not in line with the overall government objectives, but the large scale change that we need. In many ways, the travel plan should be the most important thing because it sets the parameters for the infrastructure that's needed. It's the strategy. I've got that as a bit of a wish list as well. Transport assessments are often not considerate of urban design whatsoever. Okay, they're focused on data, capacity, quantity, not quality of journeys. It might even have something which is technically okay, and it's by LTM 120. It might be a shared use path. It might be 3.2 metres wide. But it might be a really horrible journey. It might not be leading anywhere else. So what's the point of having that? It's just a vanity project. And I'm sure you can all think of developments where you've got some provision, then that provision isn't extended. And transport's all about creating a network as well. Master plans often have reference to design guidance, but only partially adhere to best practice. I spoke about those types of routes. They're often leisure routes. They're not utility routes. They're not functional in a sense of people from getting from one place to another, or they're internal. They're great for maybe teaching your child to ride a push bike, but they're not so great for you to get your child to school and back, because there's no connectivity beyond the red line of the development. Up here is an example of a case that I responded to recently. And in short, I wrote a lot more than 3 bullet points. I wrote about 3 pages, but permeability is not being maximised there. The access point is no nature, and it's very much a leisure route. The details are important. I'm going to have to accelerate a bit here. This footpath's south of Liverpool Cricket Club, where I live. Great for when I'm running. That's why, hence, the running shoes have revisited. Fantastic. But how good is it for you if you're in a wheelchair? What's the lighting like? Is it a shared use path? And often I will see something like this on an application. That doesn't tell me anything about the dimensions, the nature of it, the functionality, whether there's seating, whether it's lighting, what it connects with. And these are the things that we reflect in our responses as well, and that we ask for more information. Details number 2. Clearly you have best practice. Hague train station, if you ever get the opportunity to go there. I was gutted that I didn't have my own photo. I was rummaging around for it, so I had to get one off the internet. But I had been there, and it was just mind-blowing. The sad old Sheffield stands is what we see. We see them littered. They're almost street junk, and you certainly don't want to park your bike there as well. Cycle parking on design statements often look like this. Bunches of lines, squares. They do not tell us anything about what they are, what their functionality is. Do they cater for different users? Is it complemented by lighting? Is it complemented by amenities that will help actually encourage people to use cycling? Or are they just there because they have to be there? So there's solutions to the conundrum. TAs, TPs earlier in the process. An understanding of the layout that lends itself to AT, and integration can not only lead to better developments, but more viable developments. I think that's something that we're going to have to push a lot more moving forward. That there's some economic viability benefits in having active travel at the heart of every development. Setting of conditions and contributions that holistically connect developments, and making sure that there's a connect between the street design and the concept and what's actually adopted. And that's quite a complex thing to get around, but these are wish lists. Great things are happening. Office Replace has got a design code library. There's several design guides. My favourite, maybe a bit of Northwest bias, but because I do generally look at more schemes in the Northwest. The Streets for All design guide that Greater Manchester released at the start of the year is fantastic. And that joint stakeholder approach is really, really important. And at the moment, I can kind of say this or allude to this, is that we're working with some other government partners, and exploring some opportunities to try and build a bit of a team and produce some really good products and guidance, because clearly there's a lot of stuff out there. We need to streamline it. And that's me speaking as an old case officer. Final reflections. Collaboration is key. Resources. Now, there's a big TBC with that. I probably have the same questions that some of you might have. I mean, obviously we've had a massive period of change in the last 3 to 4 months, and I'm quite excited. I have to be optimistic in active travel. You can't not to. I spoke to a new colleague about that. I said, you have to be an optimist in active travel. And the last thing is the understanding of context and the small-scale interventions. I love to show these pictures of these chairs dotted around Barcelona, and I lament at the lack of seating in the United Kingdom. When I'm at the end of a run and I just want to sit with my Lucozade or whatever, I lament that. So always remember the small details. I've probably rushed over that a little bit too much, but thank you. Please ask questions.